Iran threatens to increase uranium enrichment for the creation of nuclear weapons as negotiations with the Americans have completely collapsed. American President Donald Trump stated today that the ceasefire with Iran is barely holding on, and that Iran's response to the proposed peace deal conditions does not satisfy Washington. Donald Trump stated irritably that he didn't even finish reading Iran's proposal because, I quote, "it's nonsense." At the same time, Trump urgently convened officials in the White House Situation Room to discuss the resumption of military action against Iran. As a result, oil prices soared again, and more forecasts agree that the US will eventually return to bombing Iran. My name is Alexei Pecci. Let's discuss this topic together, but before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, like this episode, and leave any comment you wish. Subscribe to my Telegram channel Pecci News, the link is in the description of this video. So, on Monday, US President Donald Trump met with his national security team to discuss further actions in the war with Iran, including the possible resumption of military actions. This came after the talks on Sunday ended in a complete deadlock. The White House says that Trump, of course, wants to make a deal that will bring an end. But Iran's refusal to meet many of his demands and its unwillingness to make significant concessions regarding its nuclear program have once again put the military option back on the negotiating table. In Iran, they also feel that war is likely to resume, so they have decided to raise the stakes and finally play their trump card. A representative of Iran's Parliamentary Commission on National Security and Foreign Policy stated today that if the US or Israel attacks Iran again, Tehran will move to produce weapons-grade uranium. Here is his quote. "One of Iran's options in the event of a new attack could be enriching uranium up to 90%. We will consider this in Parliament." The point is that uranium enriched to 90% is a direct path to quickly creating a nuclear program. In the end, Iran took its old favorite position, which is to stall for time and to do so for as long as possible. The US waited 10 days for Iran's response to their draft proposal to end the war, even though, I remind you, Trump had sternly declared that he was giving 48 hours for a response. They took 10 days. And Trump even believed that it was still possible to reach an agreement, that he was optimistic at the time, saying that we were almost at the point of making a deal. However, the response from Iran, which came late Sunday evening, was negative. In Tehran, they stated that Trump's proposal meant the capitulation of Iran, which they would not accept. As a result, Iran put forward a counterproposal for peace to the Americans. Trump read Iran's response and stated that the ceasefire was barely holding on and that Iran's answer to the proposed peace deal conditions did not satisfy Washington. Here is a short quote from Trump. "I didn't even finish reading the nonsense they sent." Iran wants an end to the war on absolutely all fronts, including Lebanon, where the US ally Israel is fighting against the Hezbollah group supported by Tehran. Tehran, among other conditions, also emphasized its right and sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, demanded financial compensation for the damage caused by the war, and the end of the American freeze. In this situation, Trump could not stop military action and then start negotiations on more contentious issues, including Iran's nuclear program. On the other hand, Trump has also not been able to resolve everything by military means so far. At the very least, he has not managed to unblock the Strait of Hormuz. Trump, let me remind you, even announced a separate military operation called Freedom, but the US Navy ships still couldn't accomplish anything. Even though there were clashes there, the Iranians launched rockets, the Americans attacked Iranian boats, but the unblocking of the Strait of Hormuz still did not happen. The shipping data from Kepler and LSCG companies showed that only 3 oil tankers passed through the Strait of Hormuz last week. And that wasn't thanks to the American military, but simply because they turned off their transponders to avoid being fired upon by Iran. It's also important to note that on Sunday, a Qatari gas carrier did pass through the strait, but it seems this wasn't due to American assistance. It was a separate deal between Qatar and Iran. Right now, there's another liquefied natural gas tanker called Migzam heading from Qatar's Ras Laffan to the port of Qasim in Pakistan, and it will also pass through the Strait of Hormuz without any issues. Now that Trump failed to reach an agreement, he's ready to go to war again. It emerged that the day before, Trump brought together in one room Vice President J.D. Vance, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, Secretary of State Mark Rubio, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Dan Kane, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, and other high-ranking officials. Before this meeting, Trump stated, quote, "I have a plan. Iran cannot possess nuclear weapons. The truce with Iran is barely hanging on." Iran agreed to hand over its stockpile of enriched uranium to the US, but the Iranians changed their position, as their response on Sunday did not mention this issue at all. Today, the Iranian leadership is divided between moderates and lunatics. As a result, the White House stated that Trump is once again leaning toward taking some kind of military action against Iran, and now forcing him to make concessions on the nuclear program. One of the options Donald Trump is considering is resuming the very same Operation Freedom project, that is, the American operation to escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz, which was suspended last week, because it didn't really produce any significant results. Another option is to resume the bombings and to strike up to 25% of the targets that the American military has identified but has not yet hit. The Israeli government wants Trump to order a special forces operation to secure Iran's enriched uranium stockpiles. Israeli officials say that Trump has not yet brought himself to give such an order because it is extremely risky. But I should note here that Trump is taking a risk after all, but on a different issue. The US government has announced sanctions against 3 individuals and 9 companies from the United Arab Emirates, Hong Kong, and Oman for facilitating the supply of Iranian oil to China. The US Treasury specified that the new restrictions are aimed at those who helped the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps sell oil to the Chinese market and earned hundreds of millions of dollars from it. The head of the U.S. Treasury, Scott Bessent, emphasized that the Trump administration will continue to impose sanctions to deprive the Iranian government and military of funding for purchasing weapons, supporting its proxy forces in the Middle East, and developing nuclear capabilities. In addition, the U.S. State Department recently announced a reward: dollars for information that will help uncover the financial mechanisms of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And Donald Trump is doing all this right before his visit to Beijing in the coming days, where he will hold talks with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. It is expected that the head of the White House will put pressure on the Chinese leader to help resolve the conflict with Iran and restore passage through the strategically important Strait of Hormuz. But whether it will work out is still an open question, because Xi Jinping will demand something truly valuable in return for his services. And here, my friends, I recommend you go to my YouTube channel and find the video called "Xi Jinping Presented Donald Trump with a Bill." In that video, we actually discussed how the Chinese are currently shaping the situation so that Trump will owe Xi Jinping for his help in ending the war in the Middle East. I won't repeat myself here, I'll just leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. And friends, if you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so financially with any donation. You can find the links and payment details in the description of this video or use the QR code on your screens. That's all for now, take care of yourselves, goodbye everyone.